She disappeared after the Mafia king called her nobody. But what Adrian Blackwell didn't know was that Emma Hayes walked out of his mansion carrying his unborn child beneath her heart, and she left the first proof of that child hidden inside his desk. In a house full of marble floors, armed men and old money silence, one cruel sentence shattered everything she had almost believed in. Outside Charleston, rain soaked through her coat as she kept one hand on her medical bag and the other over the secret he had already rejected without even knowing it existed. This is not just a story about revenge. It is about dignity, motherhood, betrayal, and the dangerous difference between being protected and being owned. Watch until the end, because the moment he opens that drawer will destroy the man who thought nothing could break him. Like this video and comment where you're watching from. The drawer had not always been waiting for Adrian Blackwell's guilt. Before the sonogram lay hidden beneath his silver lighter and old business cards, before Emma Hayes walked into the Charleston rain with one hand over her stomach, there had been another storm, another wound, and another version of him who had not yet learned how much a single sentence could cost. Emma had never trusted fate. Fate sounded too clean for a woman who had once held pressure on a soldier's throat while dust filled the sky and helicopters screamed overhead. Fate was for people who had time to make meaning out of disaster. Emma believed in pulse points, clean gauze, steady hands, the quiet command in a voice that could keep a dying man from slipping under. Fear did not bother her. Panic did. That was what the army had taught her. That was what war had carved into her bones. Now she worked the night shift at St. Jude Memorial in Charleston, where the emergency room lights never dimmed and nobody came in on their best day. On the nights she was not there, she volunteered at a free clinic near the port. A narrow brick building squeezed between a bait shop and a boarded warehouse that smelled of salt diesel wet rope and old blood. She liked the clinic better. At the hospital, people wore badges and titles and pretended systems worked because the walls were white. At the clinic, nobody pretended. Pain walked in honest. A split knuckle from a dogfight. A feverish child wrapped in a beach towel. A woman with sunglasses at midnight and a bruise she called a cabinet door. A fisherman who said he did not need stitches while holding his own palm closed with duct tape. Emma knew how to handle honest pain. It was polished power that made her look for exits. Men in tailored suits, men with soft voices and dead eyes. Men who smiled as if kindness were a tool they had learned to use in public. Charleston had plenty of them. They sat in private rooms at restaurants, owned docks through shell companies, shook hands with city officials, and let other people bleed for their decisions. Emma had patched up enough of their victims to know one thing clearly. Money did not make a man clean. It only made the blood harder to see. That night, rain came down hard enough to blur the harbor lights. It ran along the clinic windows in silver lines and gathered in the cracks of the sidewalk. Out past the loading cranes, the Cooper River moved black and restless beneath the storm, carrying the smell of mud fuel and secrets older than the city itself. Emma had just finished wrapping the wrist of a dock worker named Luis Morales. He had slipped while unloading cargo and opened his skin on a rusted hook. "Do not use that hand for 2 days," she said, pulling the bandage snug. Luis looked at her like she had suggested he buy a yacht. "I got 3 kids, and they need you with all your fingers." He gave a tired smile. "Yes, ma'am." Emma hated being called ma'am, but she let it pass. At 32, she already felt older than most of the men who limped through the clinic door. Not because of years, because of memory. By midnight, the waiting room had emptied. The television in the corner played a late weather report with the volume low. A coffee machine gurgled in the back room, producing something bitter enough to qualify as punishment. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Emma packed her medical bag slowly. It was army green canvas, faded almost gray with one strap sewn back on by hand. Inside were gauze tape gloves, sutures, scissors, antibiotic ointment, a pen light, a stethoscope with her name written on the tubing, and a folded photograph of her old unit tucked into the side pocket where she almost never looked. She checked everything twice. Habit kept people alive. She was reaching for the light switch when someone knocked at the back door. 3 hard knocks. A pause. 1 more. Emma went still. Normal people knocked on the front door. People who came to the back were afraid of being seen, or they had done something that made hospitals dangerous. She moved to the side window and looked into the alley. A man stood in the rain with one hand pressed against his ribs. His dark coat was soaked through. His head hung low, but she could see the line of his jaw, the blood running between his fingers, the way his body swayed once before he caught himself against the brick wall. No car nearby. No friend. No weapon in sight. Emma opened the door with the chain still latched. "We're closed." His eyes lifted. For 1 second, the rain seemed to quiet. They were dark eyes, almost black, controlled in a way that did not match the blood soaking his shirt. He looked like a man who had spent his whole life refusing help, and now hated his own body for needing it. "I need a nurse," he said. "You need an emergency room. No hospitals." Emma looked at the blood on his hand. That is what people say right before they die in inconvenient places. His mouth moved like it wanted to smile, but pain stopped it. "I can pay." I did not ask. The surprise on his face was small, but Emma caught it. Men like him expected money to arrive before mercy. It was probably how the world had always worked for him. She slid the chain free and opened the door. He stepped inside and left red drops across the tile. "Name?" Emma asked. He hesitated. "Adam." Emma stared at him. "Try again." "Adam is fine. No man bleeding through a custom coat gets to be mysterious in my clinic." "Sit down, Adam." He obeyed, which told her 2 things. The wound was bad, and he was smart enough to know it. Emma pulled his coat open and cut through his shirt. The blade wound ran low across his ribs, deep enough to need stitches, not deep enough to kill him if she worked fast. The edges were ugly. Not an accident. Not a mugging either. "You always meet knives socially?" she asked. His breath caught when she cleaned the wound. "Only when conversation gets boring. Then find better people to talk to." This time he almost laughed. The storm pressed against the windows. Thunder rolled over the port. The power flickered once and the room flashed pale. Emma worked under the harsh, light-gloved hands, sure and efficient. She expected him to curse, bargain, complain, or perform some version of male pride against pain. He did none of that. He watched her, not the way men watched women when they mistook kindness for invitation. His gaze was quieter than that, sharper, curious. "Military?" he asked. "Used to be. Medic, among other things." "That explains the hands." Emma pulled the suture through his skin. "My hands are not taking compliments from a man who gave me a fake name. Maybe Adam is my name. Maybe I am the governor of South Carolina." His lips curved, then flattened when the movement hurt. For a while, the only sounds were rain, thread sliding through torn skin, and his uneven breathing. When she finished, she taped a clean dressing over the wound and stepped back. "You need rest. Antibiotics. No lifting, no fighting, no whatever got you stabbed. That last one may be difficult." I did not ask if it was convenient. His eyes stayed on her face. "You talk to everyone like this. Only men who bleed on my floor." He looked down at the drops near his shoes. "I will pay for that too." "No, you will not. Why? Because if I start charging men for bleeding, I become this city." That landed somewhere he did not expect. His expression shifted, almost softened, then closed again like a door catching in wind. Emma washed her hands at the sink. When she turned back, he was still watching her. "What you saved me without knowing who I am." I knew enough. "What did you know? That you were hurt?" His stare sharpened. "That is enough for you. It has to be." Lightning cracked outside bright enough to fill the clinic for a heartbeat. In that flash, he looked less like a threat and more like a man who had forgotten what gentleness sounded like. She should have sent him away. She should have locked the door behind him. Instead, the storm pinned them both inside the little clinic, and the night stretched longer than either of them intended. The power went out half an hour later. The generator coughed on weak and uneven feeding only the back room. Emma found 2 candles in the emergency drawer and set them on the counter. Candlelight changed him. It took the hard shine off his face. It softened the sharp lines without making him safe. Men like him were not made safe by shadows. They simply became harder to read. He sat with one hand braced on the exam table. His shirt ruined his coat hanging over the chair. Emma should have sent him back into the alley once the bleeding stopped, but the rain had turned violent again. Water hammered the roof. Wind rattled the old door. "You always work alone?" he asked. "Most nights. That is dangerous. So is walking into a clinic with a knife wound and a fake name." His eyes flicked to the candle flame. "Fair." Emma leaned against the counter, exhaustion settling into her shoulders. She should have been afraid of him. Maybe some part of her was. But fear had never been simple for Emma. She had been afraid in war zones and still held dying boys by the hand. She had been afraid in helicopters and still climbed out when they landed. Fear was information. It was not an order. He looked around the clinic. Cracked walls, rust on the cabinet hinge, a poster about blood pressure peeling near the corner. You could work somewhere better. "I do. And you come here anyway." "Yes." Why? Emma looked at him. "Because people here still need help after business hours." He studied her as if kindness were a language he could recognize but not speak. "My father used to say people only help when they want something." "Your father sounds exhausting." A real laugh left him then, low and brief. It changed his face so completely that Emma had to look away. "He was worse than exhausting," he said. The words hung there. Outside, thunder rolled over the river. He did not give details, but a few fell loose anyway. A childhood in Charleston homes with locked rooms and polished floors. A father who believed tenderness was a liability. A mother who learned silence so well it became her first language. Boys taught early that if they did not become dangerous, danger became them. Emma gave him less, but more than she meant to. A field hospital outside Kandahar. Sand in her teeth. Blood on her sleeves. A friend named Marisol who sang old country songs while cleaning instruments. One day when the helicopters brought in too many wounded at once and Emma had to decide who got the last clean breathing tube. He listened without interrupting. That mattered more than it should have. At some point, the storm settled into a steady roar. The room smelled of candle wax, antiseptic, and wet wool. Emma sat across from him with her arms folded, tired enough to be honest. "You always this calm?" he asked. "No." He waited. Emma watched the candle flame bend and straighten. "I just learned falling apart usually has to wait its turn." His face changed again, barely. "I know that feeling." Something passed between them then. Not romance. Not yet. Recognition. 2 people who had survived different wars sat in a poor clinic near the port while Charleston drowned outside. For a few hours, neither of them had to pretend the past had left them clean. Near dawn, the rain thinned. Emma gave him antibiotics in a paper bag and instructions he probably planned to ignore. "Take these with food. I know how medicine works. You got stabbed and came to a free clinic in a storm. I am not making assumptions about your judgment." He looked at the bag, then at her badge. "Emma Hayes." She pulled the badge from her shirt and slipped it into her pocket. "And you are still Adam." His eyes held hers. "Thank you, Emma." It was the first time he said her name. For reasons she did not want to examine, she remembered the sound of it. He left through the back door just as the sky began to pale. A black SUV waited at the far end of the alley. Emma saw it only when he reached it. The driver stepped out fast. Too fast. Respectful in a way that looked almost like fear. Adam slid into the back seat without looking back. The SUV disappeared toward the river. Emma stood in the doorway with the first cold thread of understanding tightening around her chest. 2 days later, she saw his face on the local news. The hospital break room smelled like burnt popcorn and cafeteria soup. A nurse beside her complained about scheduling while the television played above the counter. Then his photograph appeared. Adrian Blackwell, shipping magnate, suspected head of the Blackwell crime family, federal racketeering investigation, alleged control of port routes along the South Carolina coast. Emma stared at the screen as the name settled over the memory of candlelight and blood. The man from the clinic was not Adam. He was Adrian Blackwell, one of the most feared men in Charleston. Emma turned the volume down and walked away before anyone noticed her face. She told herself that was the end of it. It was not. Adrian found her again 3 weeks later outside the clinic after closing. Not with a convoy, not with threats. Just one black car idling at the curb and him standing beneath the street lamp like the rain had carved him there. Emma locked the clinic door and turned. No hospitals again. No wounds tonight. That is new for you. A faint smile touched his mouth. I wanted to thank you properly. You already said thank you. I owe you. Emma stepped off the curb medical bag against her hip. Then stay away from my clinic. That is not what I meant. It is what I mean. He did not block her path. That was the strange thing. Men with power often leaned on it before they spoke. Adrian stood still and let her choose whether to walk past him. She did. But she thought about him for 3 blocks. After that, he appeared in small, careful ways. A coffee left outside the clinic door, black, no sugar, exactly how she drank it after midnight. A security light repaired in the alley, though no invoice came. A box of medical supplies delivered anonymously, too expensive for the clinic, too useful to refuse. Emma hated that she noticed the restraint. She hated more that it mattered. One night she found him sitting in the waiting room after she finished treating a child with a fever. He wore a dark suit without a tie, his coat folded across his lap, looking absurd beneath the flickering clinic lights. We are closed, she said. I know. Then why are you here? His gaze lifted. I did not want to stand in the alley like a threat. That answer disarmed her more than a threat might have. She should have sent him away again. Instead, she sat across from him. They talked until the coffee went cold. Not about the port, not about crime, not about the name Blackwell. Emma refused to ask questions that could get someone killed, including herself. They talked about ordinary things as if both of them were trying on a life that did not belong to them. Bad hospital vending machines. His dislike of boiled peanuts. Her hatred of magnolia perfume. The way Charleston looked too pretty in daylight, as if beauty could cover rot if it tried hard enough. Then came heavier things. Adrian told her he had never been allowed to want anything without turning it into a possession. Emma told him possession was not love. He looked at her, then not offended, not amused, as if she had named an illness he had lived with for years. Do you always say exactly what you think, he asked. No. Could have fooled me. I say exactly what men like you need to hear. His eyes darkened. Men like me. Powerful, careful, dangerous, used to the world bending before you ask. And what do women like you do? Emma stood to throw away the cold coffee. We survive men like you. Silence followed. When she turned back, Adrian was not smiling. Is that what you think this is? I do not know what this is. The truth sat between them, uncomfortable and alive. Neither of them touched it. For weeks, whatever existed between them moved like a shadow at the edge of Emma's life. He never came to the hospital. He never stepped inside during clinic hours. He never asked her to dinner in public where people could see and whisper. He seemed to understand, at least in those days, that his name was not an invitation. It was a danger. But loneliness is patient. It waits until the room is quiet. It waits until rain taps the window and old wounds begin speaking in familiar voices. One night, after a 12-hour shift and a fight with a drunk patient who swung at her before passing out, Emma found Adrian waiting outside the clinic again. He saw the bruise forming near her wrist. His jaw changed. Who did that? A man with a fever, too much whiskey, and bad aim. Name. No. Emma. The way he said her name unsettled her. Low, controlled, almost careful. She stepped closer. You do not get to punish everyone who hurts me. His eyes held hers. I could. I know. That is the problem. A car passed, throwing light across his face. For once, he looked less like a king of hidden rooms and more like a man standing at the edge of something he did not know how to enter. I do not know how to do this, he said. What? This. His gaze moved between them. Want something without ruining it. Emma should have walked away. Instead, she touched the bandage beneath his shirt where the old knife wound had healed rough under the skin. You start by not calling it something. His breath changed. That night they went to a small apartment Adrian kept far from the mansion, a place with no guards inside and windows facing the harbor. It was too expensive to be humble, too empty to be a home. Nothing about it was soft except the way he looked at her when she stood in the doorway, uncertain for the first time all night. You can leave, he said. I know. I mean it. I know. He crossed the room slowly, giving her time to stop him. She did not. What happened between them was not the kind of thing Emma could later make simple. It was not love, though it touched the edge of it. It was not safety, though for a few hours she let herself believe in the shape of his arms. It was need. Recognition. Two lonely people mistaking a quiet room for mercy. By morning, pale light spread across the harbor. Emma woke before him. Adrian slept on his side, face turned toward her, one hand open on the sheet as if even in sleep he was learning not to close his fist. She dressed quietly. At the door he spoke without opening his eyes. Emma. She stopped. Stay for coffee. Such a small request. Such a dangerous one. She looked back at him, at the scar below his ribs, at the man beneath the name, at the world waiting behind both. I have a shift. He opened his eyes then. The softness in them made her chest ache. She left before she could mistake that ache for permission. 6 weeks later, Emma stood in a pharmacy bathroom off King Street with a pregnancy test in her hand and the air gone thin around her. 2 pink lines. She blinked until they blurred. Someone knocked on the door. You okay in there? Emma opened her mouth, but no sound came. She placed one hand flat against her lower stomach. There was nothing to feel yet. No curve, no movement, no proof except plastic in her hand and a rising terror behind her ribs. Adrian Blackwell. The storm, the clinic, the apartment by the harbor, the one reckless night when loneliness had worn a human face. No, she whispered. Then she hated herself for it. Not because of the baby, never because of the baby. Because the world attached to that child had guns in it. Men in black cars, enemies with long memories, a father powerful enough to destroy lives without raising his voice. Emma paid cash for a private ultrasound 2 days later at a clinic outside Charleston. She wore a baseball cap and gave no emergency contact. The technician was a woman with silver hair and kind hands. She dimmed the lights and turned the monitor slightly. At first, Emma saw only shadows. Then a flicker. Small. Impossible. Defiant. That is the heartbeat, the technician said. Emma covered her mouth. The sound that left her was half laugh, half sob. For one bright second, fear stepped aside. There was a life inside her. Not a mistake, not a punishment, not shame. A life. Hers. The technician printed the picture and slid it into an envelope. Emma held it carefully as if paper could bruise. Outside, the afternoon sun was too sharp. People crossed the parking lot, carrying groceries, coffee, ordinary problems. A man cursed into his phone. A child dropped a stuffed rabbit and wailed like the world had ended. The world had not changed. Emma had. She walked until she reached a bench beneath a live oak. Spanish moss shifted above her in the humid air. The sonogram envelope rested in her lap. She pressed her fingers over it and whispered, "You are not his darkness. You are not my fear. You are mine before you are anything else." For 3 days, she tried to decide what truth required. She did not want Adrian's money. She did not want his name. She did not want to be folded into the Blackwell world like another asset with a heartbeat. But the child deserved truth, even if the truth was ugly. So Emma tried to reach him. Every number connected to Blackwell shipping led to assistant security officers, lawyers, and dead ends. At one point, a woman with a careful voice asked if Emma had an appointment. Emma looked down at the envelope on her kitchen table. "No," she said. "I have something more important than that." The line went silent, then disconnected. She almost gave up. Then the port called. A labor accident near one of the private loading docks. 2 men hurt, one with a crushed hand, another with a head wound. The free clinic needed her. Emma tucked the sonogram envelope into her medical bag before she left. She did not know why. Maybe some part of her believed Charleston had a cruel sense of timing. Maybe some part of her already felt Adrian near. The port was colder that night than it had any right to be. Wind came off the water sharp and wet, pushing through Emma's jacket as she walked from the clinic trailer toward the parking lot. Her hands smelled faintly of antiseptic. Her back ached. Her stomach rolled with the kind of nausea that waited until she was alone. Then the gunfire started. Close. 3 shots. A pause. 2 more. Emma dropped behind a parked truck before thought caught up with instinct. Her body remembered war faster than her mind remembered Charleston. Men shouted between shipping containers. An engine roared. Another shot sparked against metal. Emma should have stayed down. Then she saw a man collapse near the blue cargo stacks. Even in the dark, she knew the shape of him. Adrian. His men reached him first, shadows in black coats, voices tight with panic. One lifted a phone and cursed. Another searched the darkness with a gun in both hands. Emma ran. A tall man turned and pointed a pistol at her chest before she got within 10 feet. "Stop." Emma lifted one hand medical bag in the other. "He is bleeding out. Back up. If I back up, he dies." The man's eyes were cold, but not stupid. This was Cole Bennett, though Emma did not know his name yet. He looked at Adrian, then back at her. "You a Dr. Combat Medic?" "Nurse. More useful than whoever you are calling." Adrian coughed. Blood touched his mouth. Emma's voice snapped like a command. "Move." Cole lowered the gun. Emma dropped to her knees beside Adrian. Blood soaked his shirt high on the chest, dark and fast. She tore the fabric open and pressed gauze hard against the wound. Adrian's eyes fluttered. For one terrible second, they focused on her. Emma. Her breath caught. He remembered. Around them, his men went still. Emma leaned closer, keeping pressure. "Stay awake." His mouth curved despite the blood. "Bossy. A live man can complain later." His breathing hitched. The bullet had torn across muscle and opened a vessel close enough to make every second count. Emma worked under a security light that flickered in the rain. Her knees soaked through, her fingers numbed. She packed the wound, checked his airway, controlled the bleeding, and barked orders at men who were not used to taking them from anyone. You hold pressure here. Not there. Here. You give me more light. You stop hovering unless you plan to donate blood by crying on him. Nobody laughed. They obeyed. Dominic had called himself Adrian in the news, and now the name sat heavy in her mind as she fought to keep him alive. The envelope in her bag felt impossibly small against the sound of guns and rain. Adrian slipped in and out of consciousness. Once his hand closed around her wrist. "No hospital," he rasped. "I am not taking you anywhere until you stop trying to die. No hospital." Emma looked at Cole. Where can he be moved? Cole hesitated. Emma's voice hardened. "Somewhere clean. Somewhere warm. Somewhere with enough light for me to close this properly. Or you can stand here in the rain and watch your king bleed onto concrete." Cole made the call. The Blackwell mansion rose outside Charleston like something built to intimidate grief itself. White columns, black iron gates, old oaks heavy with moss, windows glowing gold through the rain. Emma entered through a side door with blood on her jeans, and Adrian unconscious on a stretcher carried by his men. No one asked her name. They only stared. The room they gave her was not a medical suite, but it became one under her hands. She ordered towels, boiled water, cleared tables, lamps brought closer. Someone produced an emergency kit stocked with supplies no ordinary home should have. Emma did not ask why it existed. She worked for hours. The bullet had missed the worst by less than an inch. Less than a breath. Less than whatever mercy men like Adrian did not deserve but received anyway. She cleaned the wound, removed fragments, closed torn tissue, watched for shock, and ignored the whispers gathering at the edges of the room. To them, she was a nurse in worn sneakers with wet hair and blood on her sleeves. A nobody. Fine. Nobody had saved more lives than Pride ever had. Near dawn, Adrian stabilized. His breathing evened. The pulse beneath Emma's fingers strengthened. She sat back slowly, her whole body aching. Only then did she remember the envelope in her medical bag. The sonogram. It felt impossibly fragile inside that house. Emma washed her hands in a marble bathroom and stared at herself in the mirror. Her face looked pale. There was blood under one fingernail she had missed. Her eyes looked too tired for secrets. She had saved Adrian again. Maybe that meant the truth deserved one chance. When she returned to the room, Adrian was still unconscious. His face, stripped of arrogance, looked almost like the man from the clinic. The man who had sat in candlelight and listened when she spoke about war. Emma sat beside the bed with the envelope in her lap. For several minutes, she said nothing. The house woke slowly around them. Footsteps in the hall. Low male voices. Rain ticking against the glass. Adrian stirred just after sunrise. His eyes opened with violent clarity. First the ceiling, then the room, then Cole near the door. Finally, Emma. Recognition passed across his face. Not warmth. Calculation. Emma felt the change before he spoke. The man from the clinic disappeared. In his place was Adrian Blackwell, ruler of room's owner of Fear a Man Allergic to Helplessness. One of his men smirked from the corner. "Well, boss," the man said. "Looks like your angel came back." Emma stood with the envelope in her hand. "Your bleeding is controlled. You need rest antibiotics and someone checking for infection every few hours." Adrian did not thank her. He looked at Cole. "Pay her." Emma's fingers tightened around the envelope. "I did not ask for money." That was the wrong thing to say in front of his men. She saw it the moment his eyes cooled. Gratitude made him vulnerable. Refusing money made the debt personal. A personal debt to a woman like her in front of men like them was something Adrian Blackwell could not tolerate. Another guard laughed under his breath. Maybe she wants more than money. The room shifted. Emma felt every stare touch her skin. Adrian looked directly at her, and for one heartbeat she thought he might remember the clinic, the candlelight, the way he had said her name as if it mattered. Instead, he chose the cruelest door and walked through it. A woman like her, he said quietly. I would not touch her if she were the last woman in Charleston. The words did not need volume. They crossed the room with surgical precision. Someone laughed, then someone else. Small sounds, ugly sounds, relieved sounds. Men laughing because their king had told them what was safe to believe. Emma did not move. Her face stayed calm because long ago she had learned the body could become a locked room when the heart was breaking inside it. Adrian looked away first. Get her out. The envelope bent slightly in her hand. She could have told him then. She could have held up the sonogram in front of every armed man in that room and watched truth strike him silent. But his words had already answered the question she had carried into that house. What kind of father could he be if pride mattered more than mercy? Emma picked up her medical bag. Cole stepped aside as she passed. His face revealed nothing, but his eyes followed her with something close to shame. At the entrance hall, Emma stopped beside a mahogany writing desk. A small drawer sat beneath the polished surface, its brass handle cold under her fingers. She opened it. Inside were a silver lighter, old receipts, a fountain pen, and business cards stamped with Adrian's name. Emma took out the sonogram. The tiny shape floated in black and white beneath the chandelier light. She turned the picture over and wrote with Adrian's fountain pen, Even without a father, this child will know love. For a moment her hand hovered. Then she placed the sonogram in the drawer and closed it softly. Outside, the rain had slowed to a silver mist. Charleston glistened as if the city had been washed and found guilty. Emma walked through the iron gates before anyone could offer her a ride. Her medical bag hung from one shoulder. Her uniform was stained. Her body felt hollow except for the small, fierce presence beneath her heart. At the corner, she stopped and looked back once. The Blackwell mansion stood behind its gates, white and silent, pretending it had not just swallowed something precious. Emma touched her stomach. I tried, she whispered. By sunrise, she was at the bus station with cash in her pocket, a change of clothes in her bag, and no plan except distance. The bus idled beneath dirty lights, its windows fogged with breath and old heat. People climbed aboard carrying plastic bags, backpacks, sleeping children, and the kind of exhaustion that did not ask questions. Emma took a seat near the back. When the bus pulled away, Charleston slipped past the window in broken pieces. Wet streets, closed bars, church steeples. The harbor beyond the warehouses dark and wide and indifferent. She did not cry when the city disappeared behind her. She only looked down at her stomach, pressed her palm there, and breathed through the ache as the road opened ahead. The road opened ahead, but distance did not feel like freedom at first. It felt like shock with wheels under it. Emma sat near the back of the bus with her medical bag pressed against her knees and her coat pulled tight around her body. Charleston faded behind her in wet pieces. Streetlights smeared across the window. Church steeples passed like pale fingers in the rain. The harbor disappeared last, black and wide beneath the morning fog, carrying away the city that had given her a child and then tried to make her feel small for carrying him. She kept one hand over her stomach. There was no curve yet, no visible proof, nothing the world could look at and name. But Emma knew. Every mile was a promise made in secret. Her phone buzzed in her pocket before the bus reached the county line. Unknown number. Emma stared at it until the screen went dark. It buzzed again. She powered it off. At the first rest stop, she went into a bathroom with cracked mirrors and a flickering light. A woman beside her changed a baby on the counter while a little girl sang to herself in one of the stalls. Emma stood at the sink and removed the SIM card from her phone with fingers that did not shake until the plastic hit her palm. She dropped it into the trash. Then she washed her hands, though there was nothing on them except fear. In the mirror, she looked ordinary. Pale face, dark hair tied back, old jacket, tired eyes. No one looking at her would know she had just saved the most dangerous man in Charleston, been humiliated in his mansion, and left the first picture of his unborn child hidden in his desk. That was good. Ordinary women survived longer. By sunset, the bus rolled into Beaufort, South Carolina. It was not the kind of place people ran to in stories. There was no shining skyline, no grand promise waiting at the station, no fresh beginning wrapped in music. Beaufort had salt-air old porches, narrow streets, moss-heavy in the live oaks, and houses that looked like they had learned to survive storms by bending without admitting it. Emma stepped off the bus with her medical bag, one small suitcase, and $47 more than she had expected to have because she had not eaten since morning. The air smelled like marsh grass and rain. She found a room above a closed flower shop owned by Ruth Callahan, a widow with silver hair, sharp eyes, and a way of looking at people that made lying feel like extra work. Ruth opened the door with a cigarette in one hand and a key in the other. "You running from a man." Emma went still. Ruth looked her up and down. Honey women do not arrive after dark with one bag and no forwarding address because life is treating them kindly. Emma lowered her eyes to the key. "I am running toward quiet." Ruth studied her for a long moment, then she stepped aside. Quiet costs extra when tourists come through. The room was small. One bed, one table, one window that looked down into an alley where stray cats argued over scraps. The wallpaper curled near the ceiling and the air conditioner rattled like it resented being alive. But the door locked. The sheets were clean. The window opened wide enough for escape if escape ever became necessary. Emma set her bag on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time since leaving Charleston, she let herself breathe fully. Her hand moved to her stomach. "We made it this far," she whispered. The silence answered her with the soft hum of the old air conditioner. 2 days later, Emma found work at a community clinic near the marina. Dr. Henry Miles ran it with one nurse on Tuesdays, a receptionist who brought her grandson to work, and a coffee pot that looked older than some of the patients. He was 70, narrow-shouldered, and gruff enough to make kindness look accidental. He read Emma's papers through half-moon glasses. Army flight medic. Yes. Emergency nurse. Yes. Why, Beaufort Emma looked through the open office door at the waiting room. An old man held his chest while pretending to be interested in a fishing magazine. A child coughed into her mother's sleeve. A construction worker wrapped a towel around a hand that was leaking blood onto the tile. "Because people here need help," she said. Dr. Miles grunted. "You any good?" "Yes." He handed her a pair of gloves. "Good. Start now." That was how her new life began. Not with peace, with work. Work was easier than memory. Emma cleaned wounds, checked blood pressure, gave vaccines to children who screamed before the needle touched them, and told proud men that ignoring pain did not make them stronger. She learned which fishermen lied about drinking, which mothers needed formula more than advice, which old women came in with headaches because no one else had touched their hand all week. People learned her name slowly. At first she was the new nurse, then Miss Emma. Then Emma said with relief when she walked into a room, her body changed before her life did. The nausea came in waves, always at the worst times. The smell of coffee could turn her stomach. The sight of blood did not bother her, but fried shrimp from the restaurant downstairs sent her running to the sink. She learned to keep crackers in every pocket and water beside every bed. At night, she wrote letters in a blue notebook she bought from a discount store. "Dear little one, today, a man told me stitches were for rich people. I told him infection does not check bank accounts. He laughed, then almost fainted when he saw the needle. Sometimes she wrote about ordinary things. The weather, the clinic, Ruth leaving soup outside her door and pretending she had made too much. Dr. Miles giving her a pocket knife after a drunk patient yelled in the parking lot. Sometimes she wrote the truth. I do not know how to be enough for you yet, but I am going to learn. Her belly began to round in the 4th month. At first Emma hid it beneath loose shirts and cardigans. Then hiding became useless. Beaufort noticed because small towns noticed everything, but Ruth made sure no one asked questions with teeth in them. One morning a woman at the bakery counter looked too long at Emma's stomach and opened her mouth. Ruth from behind the register said, "If you are about to ask something rude, buy 2 muffins first, so I get paid for listening." The woman bought 1 muffin and left. Emma laughed so unexpectedly she had to sit down. The first time the baby moved, rain was tapping against the window. Emma sat on the bed with the blue notebook open on her lap. Ruth was downstairs listening to old gospel music while making peach hand pies she claimed were not for sale, though half the town seemed to buy them by noon. Emma had just written, "I hope you like storms," when something fluttered inside her. Soft, almost imagined. Her pen stopped. Then it happened again. Her hand flew to her belly. "Oh," she whispered. The room seemed to hold still with her. Another movement came faint but real. Emma pressed both palms against herself and bowed her head. "Hi," she said, voice breaking. "I am here." That night she cried, quietly. Not the kind of crying that empties a room. Just tears slipping down her face while rain blurred the window, and the child inside her turned loneliness into something she could hold. In Charleston, Adrian Blackwell tried not to think about Emma Hayes. He failed with discipline. That was the worst part. His mind knew how to handle threats. Shipments, betrayals, police pressure, men who lied while sweating through expensive shirts. He could read a room in seconds. He could decide who was useful, who was weak, and who needed to disappear before dessert arrived. But Emma would not stay categorized. She had refused his money. She had not begged. She had walked out after he cut her down, and the silence she left behind had become louder than any accusation. For weeks, Adrian told himself the matter was finished. A nurse had saved his life. He had tried to pay the debt. She had chosen pride. That was not his problem. Still, he found himself looking toward the entry hall some mornings, as if he might see her standing there with blood on her jeans and contempt in her eyes. Cole Bennett noticed. Cole noticed everything. One evening, Adrian stood in his study with an untouched glass of whiskey in his hand while rain streaked the windows. "Did she take anything?" Adrian asked. Cole stood near the door. "No. Money, no. Files, no. Jewelry, nothing." Adrian's jaw tightened. "She left with the same bag she came in with." "Yes." Adrian stared at the glass. "What kind of woman does that?" Cole answered carefully. "The kind that was not there for what you thought." Adrian looked at him. Cole lowered his eyes, but not quickly enough. A month later, a report landed on Adrian's desk. It came through a private investigator who had tracked Emma through old employment records and military documents. The file was messy, patched together from half-verified databases and outdated forms. War zones were bad at keeping clean records. Names got misspelled. Casualty lists were corrected years too late. People disappeared on paper long before they died in real life. One line stopped Adrian cold. "Emma Hayes, presumed deceased in overseas clinic bombing." He read it once, then again. The room seemed to shrink around him. He saw her in candlelight, telling him falling apart had to wait its turn. He saw her in his mansion standing straight while his men laughed. He saw the way she had looked at him before walking out, not wounded like someone waiting for an apology, but finished. Adrian stood so quickly, the chair struck the wall behind him. Cole entered at once. Adrian handed him the report. "Verify it." Cole read the line, his face unreadable. "This could be outdated. Then prove that." And if it is true, Adrian's eyes went black. "Then find where she is buried." For the first time, Cole did not move right away. Adrian's voice dropped. "Do it." The search began quietly. No public questions, no police attention, no fools. Cole followed names through clinic rosters, bus footage, cash payments, pharmacies, shelters, and motel cameras. Emma had no close family, no permanent address, no husband, no one waiting to claim her if she vanished. Then a grainy image surfaced from a pharmacy outside Savannah. A woman in a baseball cap stood near the counter, half turned away from the camera. The photo was blurred, angled from above, partly blocked by a display of cough syrup. But the posture was hers. The guarded shoulders, the steady hands. The way she stood like the world might strike, and she had already decided she would not fall. Cole placed the image on Adrian's desk. Adrian stared at it without touching it. His eyes moved to the bottle in her hand. Prenatal vitamins. The room went silent. Cole saw the realization before Adrian spoke. "Find her," Adrian said. His voice was not loud. Every man in the room understood the danger in it. In Beaufort, Emma noticed the first black SUV during lunch. It moved slowly past the clinic, too clean for the street windows tinted dark enough to turn daylight into a secret. Emma was checking a little boy's ear infection when she saw it through the blinds. Her hand paused for half a second. The boy's mother noticed. "You okay, Miss Emma?" Emma smiled. "Just tired." The SUV came back the next day. Then a man in sunglasses appeared near the marina, asking whether the clinic had hired a nurse from Charleston. Another stranger entered the pharmacy, bought nothing, and glanced toward the back where prescriptions were filled. Emma stopped sleeping well. She packed an emergency bag beneath her bed. Cash, baby clothes, medical papers, prenatal vitamins, the blue notebook, the pocket knife Dr. Miles had given her. Ruth found her folding clothes at midnight. The older woman stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "He found you." Emma sat on the bed. "I think so." Ruth came inside and closed the door. "Is he the father?" Emma looked away. That was answer enough. Ruth's face softened, but only for a second. "Does he hit? No." "Does he own rooms when he walks into them?" Emma let out a breath that almost became a laugh. "Yes, the worst kind." Ruth sat beside her. "Then do not wait until he knocks." Emma planned to leave before sunrise. She did not get the chance. The afternoon was heavy with summer heat, the kind that made the air feel thick enough to drink. The clinic truck would not start, so Emma walked to the market. She bought milk peaches, crackers, and a small pack of blue baby socks she did not need but could not resist. She was almost 7 months pregnant by then, round and tired and slower than she wanted to be. Her back ached. Sweat gathered beneath her collar. The paper grocery bag softened in her arms. When she turned onto her street, Adrian Blackwell was waiting on Ruth Callahan's porch. He leaned against the railing like the house belonged to him because he had decided to stand near it. Dark shirt, sleeves rolled, no tie. His face sharper than she remembered. A black car idled across the street. Emma stopped. The grocery bag slipped. One peach fell, hit the sidewalk, and rolled toward the curb. Adrian's eyes dropped to her stomach. Everything in his face changed. Not softened, changed. Like some locked door inside him had been kicked open from the other side. For a long moment, the street held its breath. Cicadas screamed in the trees. A dog barked 2 houses down. Somewhere a lawnmower droned, then cut off. Adrian stepped down from the porch. Emma forced herself not to step back. His voice came low. Whose child is that? There were 100 things she could have said. She could have lied. She could have told him to leave. She could have asked why he cared now. Instead, her body moved before fear could catch her. She slapped him. The sound cracked through the humid afternoon. One of his men opened the car door. Adrian lifted a hand, stopping him. His head had turned with the force of the slap. A red mark rose across his cheek. Slowly, he looked back at her. Emma's palm stung. Her voice came rough but steady. The man who called me nobody does not get to ask that question. Adrian did not move. His eyes held hers, then lowered again to her belly. This time the look was not suspicion. It was shock, raw, furious, almost afraid. You should have told me. The words hit Emma so hard she laughed once. I came to tell you. His face tightened. You left. You humiliated me in front of your men. I did not know. You did not ask. A muscle worked in his jaw. Emma stepped closer despite the weight in her body, despite the men watching, despite the car, despite everything in him that had once made Charleston lower its voice. I had the sonogram in my bag, Adrian. I held it in my hand while you looked at me like I was dirt on your floor. His eyes flickered. For 1 second she saw the blow land. Then pride rose, old and ugly. My child has been hidden from me for months. My child has been protected from you for months. His voice sharpened. That baby is mine. Emma's hand went to her stomach. This baby is mine before he is anything to a man who thinks ownership is the same as love. Adrian stepped closer. I have enemies. I know. If they find out, he becomes leverage. He became leverage the moment you showed up with armed men. Adrian looked toward the black car, then back at her. Something moved behind his eyes, but he did not apologize. Pack your things. No. You are coming back to Charleston. No. The word was small, but it stood between them like a wall. Adrian's face became very still. Emma. She hated the way her name sounded in his mouth, hated that some part of her remembered it in candlelight, hated that the baby moved just then, a slow pressure beneath her ribs as if listening. I built a life here, she said, in a rented room above a flower shop, in peace. You call this peace, looking over your shoulder, sleeping with a knife under your pillow. Emma went cold. You had me watched. I had you found. There is a difference only to men like you. He looked at her stomach again. I owe you a life. You owe me respect. Silence fell. Adrian's mouth tightened as if the word itself offended him. Then he said, Then I will raise him as the debt repaid. Emma stared at him. A child is not a debt. Before he could answer, pain tightened low in her belly. Not labor. Not yet. But sharp enough that she drew breath through her teeth. Adrian saw. His expression changed instantly. He reached for her. Emma slapped his hand away. Do not touch me. His voice dropped. Are you in pain? I am pregnant and standing in South Carolina heat while the man who broke my heart tries to drag me back into his house. What do you think? The words came out before she could stop them. Adrian went still. It broke my heart. Emma wished she could take that part back. Not because it was untrue, because it gave him something real. His men approached carefully. Too carefully. That was the horror of it. No rough hands, no shouted threats. One picked up the scattered groceries. Another opened the car door. Cole stepped out from the passenger side. When Emma saw him, his face looked carved from regret. Miss Hayes, he said softly. Emma looked at him. "You knew where I was?" His silence answered. Across the street, Ruth Callahan appeared on the porch with a dish towel in her hand. Emma Adrian did not look away from Emma. Emma knew what would happen if Ruth interfered. Not because Adrian would order harm. Maybe he would not. But men like him carried violence the way storms carried lightning. It could strike without permission. Emma forced herself to speak calmly. "I am all right, Ruth." The lie tasted like blood. Adrian's gaze softened by a fraction, as if he understood what it cost her to protect someone else from him. Cole opened the back door. Emma did not move. Adrian leaned closer, voice low enough for only her to hear. "If my enemies learn about him before I secure this, they will come for you both. Hate me in my house, curse me in my house, but breathe in my house." Emma looked at him. There it was, the closest thing to fear he had shown, not for himself, for the child. It was not enough. It could never be enough. But the pain in her belly had not fully faded, and Ruth was watching from the porch, and the town Emma had tried to protect was suddenly exposed to a world it did not deserve. Emma walked to the car on her own. That was all she had left. Choice inside a trap. She lowered herself into the back seat and refused Adrian's hand. The interior smelled like leather money and old power. The windows were tinted so dark the street outside looked like a memory. Cole placed her medical bag beside her. The tiny blue baby socks sat on top, rescued from the fallen grocery bag. Adrian got in on the other side. Neither of them spoke as the car pulled away. Emma watched Beaufort pass behind the glass. The clinic, the Marina Road. Ruth standing on the sidewalk with one hand pressed to her mouth. Dr. Miles stepping out of the clinic doorway in the distance too far to understand, close enough to know something was wrong. Emma placed both hands on her stomach. "I am sorry," she whispered. Adrian turned his head slightly. She did not look at him. "I was not talking to you." The drive back to Charleston felt longer than the escape had. Marshland shimmered beneath the brutal afternoon sun. Gas stations came and went. The baby shifted restlessly, as if he too knew they were crossing back into danger. At one point, Adrian reached for a bottle of water from the console and offered it to her. Emma stared at it. "It is sealed," he said. "I know how bottles work." He set it beside her instead of pushing. Small mercy. Too late. As evening fell, Charleston rose ahead, bruised purple beneath the sinking sun. Emma felt her chest tighten. The city had teeth now. Every street remembered her leaving. Every light seemed to ask why she had not run farther. When the Blackwell mansion gates opened, the iron bars swung inward without a sound. Emma looked up at the white columns, the glowing windows, the balconies wrapped in shadow. Inside, somewhere near the entry hall, a small drawer still held the first picture of Adrian Blackwell's son. She stepped out of the car before Adrian could come around to help her. Men lowered their eyes as she entered, but she felt their curiosity moving from her face to her belly. Adrian walked beside her, close enough to claim, not close enough to comfort. At the foot of the stairs, Emma stopped and looked at him. "You can bring me back here," she said. "You can lock every gate. You can put men outside every door." Adrian's face revealed nothing. Emma's voice lowered. "But you will not make me yours by force." For the first time that day, Adrian had no answer. Emma walked up the stairs with his child beneath her heart, and her dignity held like a blade where no one could take it. The mansion did not welcome Emma back. It absorbed her. The front doors closed behind her with a sound so soft it was almost polite, and somehow that made it worse. A prison with manners was still a prison. The Blackwell house smelled of polished wood, old flowers, expensive soap, and secrets pressed deep into the walls. Men stood in corners without looking like guards. Women in dark uniforms moved through hallways without making noise. Every painting seemed to watch. Every mirror threw Emma's swollen body back at her, as if the house wanted proof of what Adrian had dragged through its gates. Adrian gave her the east bedroom. It was beautiful in the way expensive things could be beautiful without being kind. Tall windows, white curtains, a pale stone fireplace carved with roses, a balcony overlooking the garden, fresh flowers on the table beside the bed, a crystal pitcher of water on a silver tray. The bathroom smelled like lavender and money. Emma stood in the center of the room with her medical bag still over one shoulder. Behind her, the door clicked. Not loudly, not cruelly, just locked. She turned and stared at it. Her son moved beneath her palm, slow and stubborn, as if he already disliked the room. Emma placed both hands over her stomach and looked toward the balcony doors. "We are not staying here forever," she whispered. The baby answered with another small shift. That was enough for her to breathe. The next morning, Adrian came with a doctor, a nutritionist, and a woman carrying a clipboard. Emma sat by the window wearing the same dress from yesterday, because no one had asked whether she wanted her own clothes. Her ankles were swollen. Her back ached. Her mouth tasted like sleep and anger. The doctor introduced himself as Dr. Palmer. He had soft hands, a careful smile, and the expensive confidence of a man who was used to being paid before being questioned. He turned to Adrian before he turned to Emma. "How far along is she?" Emma lifted her eyes. "I am sitting right here." Dr. Palmer blinked. "Of course, Miss Hayes. Then speak to me." The room tightened. The nutritionist looked down at her folder. The woman with the clipboard stopped writing. Adrian stood near the door with his arms folded, his face unreadable. Dr. Palmer cleared his throat and began again. Emma answered every question calmly. Yes, the baby moved. No bleeding, no contractions. Some back pain, mild nausea. No dizziness unless they counted being taken across state lines by armed men. The pen in Dr. Palmer's hand paused. Adrian's jaw flexed. Emma smiled without warmth. "Write that down, too." After the exam, Adrian dismissed everyone except her. The door closed and the room felt larger with only the two of them in it. "I need my medical records from Beaufort," Emma said. "I already sent for them." Her eyes hardened. "You had no right." "I have every right where my son is concerned. You keep saying that like it makes you sound like a father." Adrian stepped closer. "What do you want from me, Emma?" The question nearly made her laugh. "I wanted you to ask that before you sent men to my porch." His face closed. "Breakfast will be brought up. I am not hungry. You need to eat. I need freedom. Breakfast is not a substitute." For a moment, something dark and helpless crossed his eyes. Then he turned and left without another word. The days settled into a routine that felt designed to soften her without ever freeing her. Breakfast at 8. Doctor visits twice a week. Walks in the garden when the heat was not too cruel. Prenatal vitamins beside her water glass. New dresses in the closet, all pale fabrics and delicate buttons chosen by someone who thought pregnancy turned women into porcelain. Emma wore the simplest ones and hated them all. She spent hours reading medical journals from Adrian's private library. She took slow walks through the halls when no one stopped her. She learned the house the way she had once learned field hospitals in hostile territory. Main staircase, service stairs, kitchen entrance, camera above the west hallway, guard rotation every 4 hours, garden gate locked from the inside, laundry room door with a loose hinge, staff elevator that made a soft click before opening. The mansion was not just a home, it was a machine. Every machine had weak points. Most of the staff watched her with curiosity they tried to hide. Some looked at her belly with pity, others with judgment. A few whispered when she passed. "Is that her, the nurse? They say he found her in Beaufort. They say she trapped him." Emma never answered. Silence was not surrender. Sometimes silence was a locked door. Only Cole Bennett treated her like a person. He escorted her to the garden when Adrian was busy, but he did not hover. He did not stare at her stomach. He did not pretend she should be grateful. One afternoon, the heat pressed down so heavily that Emma had to stop beside the fountain. Her hand went to her lower back. Cole noticed but did not reach for her. He simply offered his arm. "Only if you want it." Emma looked at him. That mattered enough that she took it. They walked beneath the oak trees while sunlight moved through the leaves. "You could have warned me," she said. Cole did not ask what she meant. "Yes. Why didn't you?" His face stayed forward. "Because I was loyal to the wrong thing." Emma released his arm. "Loyalty is only noble when the person deserves it." Cole accepted the wound without defending himself. "That is becoming clear." Serena Vale arrived 3 days later. Emma saw her first from the balcony, stepping out of a silver car in a cream dress and dark sunglasses. She moved through the world as if it had been polished for her arrival. Tall, blonde, graceful with diamonds at her ears and a smile that looked expensive before it looked warm. Adrian met her at the front steps. They spoke too quietly for Emma to hear, but she saw Serena touch his arm. She saw Adrian step back half an inch. She saw Serena notice. Later, Emma found her in the sitting room pouring tea from a silver pot she had not been invited to touch. "You must be Emma," Serena said. Her voice was honey over glass. Emma stood in the doorway. "And you must be comfortable in houses that are not yours." Serena smiled. "This house and I have history. So do old stains." The smile remained, but Serena's eyes sharpened. Her gaze drifted to Emma's stomach. Adrian always did have a weakness for damaged things. Emma walked to the table, picked up the cup Serena had poured, smelled it once, and set it down untouched. "Damaged people learn where poison hides." Serena laughed softly. "You are dramatic." "No, just experienced." From that day on, Serena came often. She brought flowers. She brought advice. She brought stories about Adrian before Emma knew him. Charity galas, engagement dinners, old family alliances, promises made between powerful people over wine and contracts. She never said former fiancé, but the house said it for her. The older staff lowered their eyes when Serena passed. Adrian's men gave her space. She knew which hallway led to the private study and which cabinet held the good whiskey. Emma watched and filed everything away. Then Adrian began to get sick. At first it was small, a tremor in his right hand when he lifted his coffee, a pause on the stairs, a blink that lasted too long during a meeting. His color faded beneath his tan. He left meals unfinished. His temper grew sharper, then stranger, flaring and vanishing as if his body could no longer hold the heat. Everyone called it stress. Emma knew the language of bodies under attack. Stress did not move with such patience. One morning, Adrian came to her room because Dr. Palmer had reported that her blood pressure was slightly high. He stood near the window, lecturing her about rest while his right hand trembled against his thigh. Emma stopped listening to his words and watched his fingers. "Sit down." He frowned. "Excuse me. Sit down before you fall down." "I am fine. You are sweating in a cool room, your pupils are uneven, and your right hand has been shaking for 3 days." His eyes darkened. "You have been watching me. There is very little else to do in captivity." He looked away, irritated, but he sat. Emma crossed the room and took his wrist before he could object. His skin was hot. His pulse was uneven. Adrian stared at her hand on him. "Do not make that face," she said. "I am not touching you for romance." Something flickered in his eyes. "Then why?" "Because someone in this house may be trying to kill you." The room went still. Adrian withdrew his hand. That is not your concern. Emma laughed once. Cold, humorless. You brought me and my unborn child into this house. Every threat here is my concern. He rose too fast and swayed. His hand caught the chair. Emma saw the fear he buried. So did he. He left without thanking her. That night Emma began testing. Adrian had a private medical room near the back of the mansion stocked for emergencies he did not want hospitals to know about. It had locked cabinets, sterile equipment, testing strips, a centrifuge, and a small refrigerator for blood samples. Whoever had designed it had assumed a pregnant nurse would obey locked doors. They were wrong. Emma collected what she could. Residue from Adrian's coffee cup, powder from his vitamin capsules, water from the pitcher in his study, tea leaves from the silver pot Serena favored, a smear from a handkerchief stained by a nosebleed Adrian had tried to hide. She worked at night barefoot on cold tile, one hand often pressed to the ache in her lower back. The results came slowly then, all at once. A cumulative toxin, not enough to kill quickly, enough to mimic exhaustion, neurological decline, heart strain, and eventual organ failure. A tragic collapse. A powerful man worked too hard until his body betrayed him. A patient death. A perfect murder. Emma stared at the test strip beneath the lamp. Someone close was poisoning him. Close enough to control what he drank. Close enough to know his routines. Close enough to smile at his table. She found Adrian in his study before dawn. The door was half open. He leaned over the desk, one hand pressed flat against the wood, the other gripping his chest. Sweat dampened his shirt. His breathing came shallow and wrong. A cup of tea sat near his elbow. Emma crossed the room fast. Do not drink anything else. He looked up, eyes unfocused. Emma. It was the first time he had said her name without command in it. She held out a small vial. Drink this. His laugh came rough. You expect me to trust you? No. I expect you to prefer living. His gaze moved from her face to the vial. What is it? A counter-agent. To what? To the thing killing you slowly while everyone around you calls it stress. His hand trembled. For once, he did not hide it. He took the vial and drank. For the next hour, Emma stayed beside him. She checked his pulse, counted his breathing, watched his pupils, and kept the cup of tea out of reach. He fought unconsciousness like it offended him, then lost. When he woke before dawn on the leather couch, Emma was still there. She threw the lab report onto his chest. The papers slid across his shirt. You are being poisoned. Adrian read in silence. Emma stood over him, exhausted, furious, 7 months pregnant, and finished with being underestimated. I did not save you because I forgive you, she said. I saved you because my son deserves a father with a soul. Try to grow one before he is old enough to notice the difference. Adrian looked up at her. No anger, no insult, no defense. Only the raw shock of a man saved by the woman he had wronged with no clean language to answer it. After that night, the house changed. Adrian questioned everyone quietly at first, then, with violence held just beneath the surface. Men disappeared into rooms and came out pale. Staff were reassigned, food was tested, cameras were reviewed. Serena still came, but Adrian no longer let her pour his tea. Emma noticed that too. He changed with her as well, though not in ways that asked for praise. The guard outside her bedroom vanished. Her garden walks became unsupervised. Her medical journals were returned without being searched. When Dr. Palmer spoke over her, Adrian cut him off. Answer her question. Emma looked at him. Adrian did not look back. One evening he found her in the garden at dusk. The air smelled of jasmine and damp earth. Emma sat on a stone bench with one hand on her belly, breathing through a wave of back pain. Adrian stopped several feet away. May I sit? The question was so unfamiliar in his voice that Emma almost did not understand it. She nodded once. He sat, leaving space between them. For a while, neither spoke. Then he said, "What I said that morning was unforgivable." Emma watched the fountain. "Yes. I said it because my men were watching. That makes it smaller. Not better." "I know." She looked at him then. He seemed tired, not weak, not humble yet, but tired in a way that had nothing to do with poison. "I was cruel because I felt exposed," he said. "You had seen me helpless. I had seen you human." The words stayed between them. Adrian lowered his eyes. "I did not know what to do with that." Emma's voice softened by 1 degree, and she hated herself for it. "You could have said thank you." His breath left him quiet and bitter. "I was not raised for simple things. No one is. We learn or we become monsters." Adrian looked at her belly. "Our son moved during the exam today." Emma stiffened. "Dr. Palmer told you." "Yes. He had no right." "I know." The answer stopped her. Adrian turned his hands palm up like a man showing he held no weapon. "I told him not to report anything to me unless you approve it." Emma stared at him. He continued, "I do not know how to do this. Fatherhood, respect, any of it. That is not my job to teach you." "No," he said quietly. "It is mine to learn." For the first time since Beaufort, something dangerous shifted inside Emma. Not forgiveness, not trust. A crack in the wall where hope could become a mistake. Serena saw it. 2 days later, the trap closed. It began with a burner phone found under Emma's mattress. Then bank transfer records bearing her name. Encrypted messages printed and placed before Adrian like evidence carved in stone. Shipping routes, security schedules, weapons locations. All linked to Victor Kane Adrian's East Coast rival. Emma denied nothing at first because the accusation was so absurd she thought reason would handle it. Reason did not survive in a house built on suspicion. Adrian summoned her to the dining hall. Every important man in his organization stood there. Cole near the wall. Serena by the fireplace in a black dress, face, calm eyes, bright. Emma entered slowly, heavy with pregnancy, her back aching, her ankles swollen, her patience gone. Adrian stood at the head of the table. On the marble surface near his hand was a small velvet ring box. Open. A diamond ring glittered inside it like a cruel joke. Emma looked at the ring, then at him. His face was a mask, but his eyes were ruined. "I was going to make you my wife," he said. The room went silent. Emma felt the words strike places she had not known were still tender. Adrian threw a stack of papers across the table. "How long have you been working for Victor Kane?" Emma did not touch them. "You cannot be serious." "The phone was in your room. Then someone put it there. The transfers are in your name. Then someone used my name. There is a recording." Emma's eyes flicked to Serena. Serena's expression did not change. Emma looked back at Adrian. "And you believe it?" His silence answered. Something inside Emma went quiet. Not broken. Worse. Finished. "You learned nothing," she said. Adrian flinched as if she had struck him. Then pride saved him from the pain. "Take her downstairs." Cole stepped forward, face pale. "Adrian." Adrian did not look away from Emma. Now. No one touched her roughly. That almost made it more unbearable. They guided her down the back stairs, past the wine cellar, past old brick walls, to a room beneath the house where the air smelled of mildew and rusted iron. The door closed. The lock turned. Emma stood in the dark until her eyes adjusted. A narrow cot, a small barred window, a bucket in the corner, stone floor cold beneath her feet. Her baby kicked hard. Emma pressed both hands to her stomach and bowed forward. "Not here," she whispered. "Please, not here." For a few minutes she let herself shake. Then she wiped her face with the back of her hand and listened. Footsteps above. Pipes knocking. A guard coughing every few minutes. Water dripping near the window. A door opening somewhere down the corridor. A prison was still a room. Rooms had exits. For 48 hours, Emma became what war had made her. Patient, observant, merciless with detail. She studied the guard rotation. She counted the delay between meal trays. She used a bent spoon to loosen old mortar near the window frame. When the baby pressed low and pain tightened across her belly, she breathed through it and kept working. On the second night, Cole brought the tray himself. He did not look at the window. He did not look at the spoon hidden beneath the cot. He set the tray down and said quietly, "I heard the recording. It was not your voice." Emma stared at him. "Then tell him. I am trying." "That is not enough." Cole's face tightened. He slid something small beneath the edge of the tray before standing. A paper clip. Emma looked at it, then at him. "I am sorry," he whispered. Emma took the paper clip after he left. By dawn, the window latch gave. The opening was impossibly narrow. Emma scraped her shoulders raw, tore her dress, and bit her lip until she tasted blood to keep from crying out. For one terrifying moment, her belly caught against the stone, and pain flashed white behind her eyes. Then she was through. She fell into wet grass outside the foundation wall, gasping, one hand clamped over her stomach. No alarm. Not yet. Emma forced herself to stand. Barefoot, bleeding, carrying her son through the gray edge of morning, she ran. Emma ran until the mansion was no longer behind her. She ran until the white columns disappeared into morning fog, until the iron gates became nothing but dark lines swallowed by wet trees, until Charleston opened its narrow streets and let her vanish between sleeping houses and delivery trucks. Her feet were bare. Her dress was torn at the shoulder. Blood dried along one arm where the stone window had scraped her skin raw. Every breath dragged through her chest, sharp and hot, but one hand stayed beneath her belly and the other clutched the strap of her medical bag. The baby moved hard, low, angry, alive. "Stay with me," Emma whispered. She did not know if she was speaking to her son or herself. The city woke around her as if nothing sacred had been broken before sunrise. A man hosed down the sidewalk outside a bar. A bakery truck backed into an alley. Church bells rang somewhere beyond the rooftops, too clean and too distant to mean anything. Emma slipped into a public restroom near the bus station and locked herself inside the last stall. Her hands moved from training not thought. She washed the blood from her arm. She changed into the spare clothes folded inside her medical bag. A loose gray sweater, black pants, sneakers she had stolen from the mansion laundry room before climbing through the window. In the mirror she looked pale, bruised, pregnant enough that no disguise could hide the truth. But her eyes were steady. Adrian Blackwell had called her nobody. Then he had brought her back like property. Then he had believed the first lie that gave him permission to punish her again. Emma touched the mirror with 2 fingers. "No more," she said. She bought a bus ticket with cash under the name Emma Ray. Not north, not west, not anywhere that made sense. She chose a route that moved inland first, away from the coast, away from ports, away from the kind of places Adrian's men knew how to search. She kept her head down through every station. She slept in short, shallow pieces with one hand inside her bag around the handle of the pocket knife. She ate crackers when she could. She drank water when her stomach allowed it. She wrote nothing in the blue notebook because words felt too dangerous. At night, on buses that smelled of old fabric and tired people, she dreamed of the cellar, water dripping, the window frame scraping her skin, Adrian's face in the dining hall when he looked at her as if she had already betrayed him. Then she woke with one hand over her belly and reminded herself she was still free. Back in Charleston, Adrian broke Serena Vale's lie just after sunrise. It was not mercy that opened his eyes. It was anger sharpened into investigation. The fake evidence was too perfect. The transfers were too clean. The messages were too convenient. Emma had stood in the dining hall and denied nothing at first because the accusation had been beneath logic. Serena had watched her like a woman waiting for a curtain to fall. Adrian had believed the story because some poisoned part of him wanted the old rules back. Suspicion was easier than trust. Control was easier than fear. Now he tore through the evidence with a mind trained by betrayal. He followed the money through Serena's family accounts. He found the technician who had built the voice recording. The man broke in less than 5 minutes under Cole's stare and Adrian's silence. The phone had been planted. The recording had been made from clipped fragments of Emma's voice stolen during her medical visits. The bank transfers had moved through a shell company tied to Serena's father. Then Cole placed one final printout on Adrian's desk. A message to Victor Kane. 2 lines. Increase the dosage after dinner. Once Blackwell weakens, the nurse takes the blame. Adrian read it once. His face emptied. Cole stood across from him, pale and silent. Adrian walked to Serena's guest suite without raising his voice. The hallway seemed to move out of his way. Men lowered their eyes. Staff disappeared through side doors. Serena was sitting at the vanity, fastening an earring. She saw him in the mirror and smiled. Adrian, you look terrible. He stepped inside and closed the door. You poisoned me. Her hand paused, only for a second. Then she finished with the earring. You always did prefer dramatic women. I suppose I adapted. Adrian crossed the room and dropped the printed messages onto the vanity. The papers slid across her perfume bottles. Serena looked down at them. She did not cry. She did not beg. She laughed once softly. You wanted to believe her guilty, she said. I only gave you permission. Adrian's face had gone colorless. She saved my life. No, Serena said, turning on the stool to face him. She made you kneel. The words struck deeper than she knew. Serena stood diamonds bright at her ears, her cream silk robe tied at the waist, her face beautiful and cold. She walks in with cheap shoes and a martyr's hands, and suddenly the great Adrian Blackwell asks permission to sit in his own garden. Suddenly, doctors answer to her. Men lower their eyes for her. You were going to put a ring on her finger. Adrian said nothing. Serena stepped closer. I protected the name your father built. My father built a prison, and you were born to rule it. No, Adrian said. His voice was quiet enough to make her stop smiling. I was raised to confuse fear with respect. For the first time, Serena looked uncertain. Adrian opened the door. Cole stood outside with 2 men. Keep her here, Adrian said. Serena's expression changed. Adrian. He did not look back. Not another word. He ran. By the time Adrian reached the cellar, the house had already begun to know something was wrong. Guards moved fast through the lower hall. Cole followed him down the back stairs, one hand on his gun. The cellar corridor smelled of mildew and old wine. Adrian reached the door and unlocked it himself. The room was empty. The narrow cot had been shoved aside. A bent spoon lay near the wall. The small window hung open, rain dampening the stone beneath it. Blood marked the sill. Adrian went still. He touched the blood with 2 fingers. For 1 second the room disappeared. He saw Emma scraping herself through stone because he had put her there. He saw her heavy with his child alone in the dark, whispering to a baby who had done nothing except exist. His hand curled into a fist. Cole's voice came from behind him. She cannot be far. Adrian turned and tore through the house. Her bedroom was empty. The bathroom was empty. The garden path was wet and silent. The laundry room door stood open. The east stairs held nothing but dust and morning light. Men scattered under his orders, but their voices sounded far away. Adrian moved through the mansion like a man searching for the place where his own soul had been left behind. At the entrance hall he stopped. The mahogany writing desk stood beneath the chandelier. Small, polished, harmless. A memory moved through him. Emma walking out after he had called her nothing. Her hand near the drawer. The soft click he had ignored because he was too busy surviving his own pride. Adrian walked to the desk. His fingers closed around the brass handle. The drawer opened with a quiet slide. Inside lay a curled sonogram photo. The edges were worn by time and silence. Adrian picked it up slowly. The image was grainy black and white, almost impossible to understand at first. A tiny shape floated in the dark. His child, his son, life reduced to shadow and miracle. He turned it over. Emma's handwriting waited for him. Even without a father, this child will know love. The floor seemed to tilt. Adrian sank to his knees beneath the chandelier. No one laughed now. No one spoke. The most feared man in Charleston sat with a sonogram shaking in his hands, while the house he ruled went silent around him. "She came to tell me," he said. Cole stood several feet away. "Yes. I had it in front of me. Yes." Adrian folded over the picture as if grief had finally found his spine. "She had it in her hand, and I made her swallow the truth because I was afraid my men would think I cared." Cole's voice was low. "You cared too late." Adrian looked up. There was no anger in his face, only ruin. "I know." For days, Emma moved through cheap motels, bus stations, rural roads, and towns where no one knew the Blackwell name unless it appeared in business headlines from another world. Her body grew heavier. Her back ached constantly. Her feet swelled inside her shoes. Sometimes sitting in the corner of a diner with a glass of water and a plate of toast she could barely afford, she would feel the baby roll beneath her ribs, and the fear would go quiet for one clear second. He was still there. He was still hers. In Knoxville, Tennessee, under a gray sky full of rain, labor began in a motel bathroom. At first, Emma told herself it was false labor. She timed the pains with the cheap clock above the sink. 10 minutes apart. 7. 5. She gripped the counter and breathed through the next contraction, eyes shut tight, forehead damp with sweat. "No," she whispered. "Not here." The bathroom smelled of bleach and old smoke. The light above the mirror buzzed. Outside the thin wall, a television played too loud in the next room, some game show audience laughing like the world had a cruel sense of timing. Another contraction hit. Emma doubled over, one hand braced against the sink, the other pressed low against her stomach. "All right," she breathed. "All right, baby, you win." She drove herself to a small rural hospital before dawn, stopping twice on the shoulder of the road to breathe through pain so sharp it turned the world white at the edges. At the front desk she gave the name Emma Ray and no emergency contact. The nurse on duty looked at her bruised, calm, swollen belly and torn silence. She did not ask too many questions. That was mercy. Her name was Tasha Green, and she had gentle hands and a voice like warm coffee. The birth was long enough for daylight to fill the window, long enough for Emma to curse Adrian, pray, without knowing who she was praying to, and nearly bite through her lip trying not to scream. There was no mother holding her hand, no husband pacing outside, no father waiting to hear his son cry. Only Tasha standing beside the bed wiping Emma's forehead with a cool cloth. "Look at me, Emma," Tasha said when the pain became too much. "You are not alone in this room. I am right here." Emma wanted to believe her. Another contraction rose hard and merciless. Emma clutched the rail and pushed with everything the world had not yet taken from her. Then the sound came. A cry. Small, furious, perfect. The whole room changed. Tasha placed the baby on Emma's chest, and Emma forgot pain, forgot blood, forgot the men who might still be looking for her, forgot the mansion and the cellar and every cruel word that had tried to make her smaller. Her son was warm against her skin, dark hair, tiny mouth, fists curled like he had entered the world ready to fight. Emma looked down at him and broke open in a way that did not feel like weakness. "Hi, Noah," she whispered. "I am your mama." His crying softened at her voice. Emma laughed through tears. "I have enough love for both of us," she said. "Do you hear me? Enough for both of us." Tasha looked away politely, giving her the privacy of a woman meeting the only person who had never hurt her. 6 weeks after Noah was born, Emma had learned the new shape of exhaustion. It lived in her shoulders, under her eyes, in the way she woke before the baby even cried, in the way she measured safety by exits, shadows on familiar cars, and how quickly she could pack. She rented a small room outside Mobile Bay above a bait shop owned by a man who accepted cash and did not care about stories. The room smelled of salt old wood and fishing nets. At night, wind rattled the windows, and Noah slept in a dresser drawer lined with folded blankets because Emma could not afford a crib yet. She worked where she could. A feverish child in a trailer park, an old woman with infected stitches, a construction worker who paid her in groceries. Emma never stayed anywhere long. She did not know that Adrian was destroying himself trying to find her. In Charleston, the Blackwell empire had begun to bleed. Victor Kane attacked first from the north, sliding into the spaces Adrian no longer watched. A shipment vanished outside Savannah. A warehouse burned near Wilmington. 2 lieutenants disappeared with cash and loyalty that had never been as deep as they claimed. Adrian sat through meetings with the sonogram folded inside his wallet. When men spoke of territory, he heard Emma's voice. You learned nothing. When they spoke of retaliation, he saw blood on the cellar window. When they asked for orders, he studied their faces and wondered which of them had laughed the morning he called her nobody. His power did not vanish all at once. It leaked. Cole found him one night in the entry hall, sitting beneath the chandelier, the drawer open beside him. The sonogram lay in his palm. "You have not slept," Cole said. Adrian did not look up. "She was going to tell me." Cole stayed silent. She had it in her hand. "Yes. And I made her leave with it in her throat." Cole stepped closer. "Regret is not a search plan." Adrian looked at him then. "No." He folded the sonogram carefully and placed it back in his wallet. "It is not." The search for Emma continued, but differently now. No threats at clinics, no men frightening old women at pharmacies, no pressure on landlords. Adrian had finally understood that finding Emma by force would only prove she had been right to run. So he searched through need. Medical debt paid anonymously across 3 states. Cash donations sent to clinics that served women without questions. A new roof for Ruth Callahan's building after a storm damaged the flower shop. A shipment of supplies delivered to Dr. Miles's clinic in Beaufort with no sender listed. Cole watched all of it and said charity will not bring her back. Adrian signed another transfer. It is not supposed to. That was the first honest thing he had done without asking it to become a key. Winter moved toward spring. Noah grew. He learned Emma's voice before anything else. He knew the rhythm of her steps, the scent of antiseptic on her hands, the song she hummed under her breath when she was afraid and pretending not to be. Sometimes in the blue light before dawn, Emma held him against her chest and told him pieces of the truth. "Your father was not gentle when gentleness mattered," she whispered once. "But you are not his worst mistake. You are the best thing that ever came from a broken place." Noah yawned and curled his fist against her shirt. Emma kissed his hair. Outside, a truck slowed on the road. Emma froze. The truck passed. Only then did she breathe again. Victor Kane learned about the baby before Adrian found them. He learned through a paid nurse in Tennessee, a motel clerk in Georgia, a pharmacy receipt near Mobile, and one grainy photo taken through a windshield on a rainy afternoon. Emma Hayes stood outside a small grocery store with Noah tucked against her chest beneath a blanket. Victor studied the image in a private office with no windows. The baby's face was turned slightly toward the camera. Dark hair. Blackwell eyes. Victor smiled. To another man, a child might have been innocent. To Victor Kane, innocence was only leverage that had not been used yet. He tapped the photograph once with his finger. "Find where she sleeps," he said. The man across from him nodded. Victor leaned back in his chair. "And do not touch the child until I say so. Blackwell has lost territory. He has lost men. He has lost the stomach for blood." His smile widened. "Now, let us see what he does when he has something left to lose." That night, Emma sat in the bait shop room with Noah asleep against her shoulder. Rain moved softly against the window. The lamp flickered once, then steadied. Noah sighed in his sleep. Emma rubbed small circles against his back. For the first time in weeks, the room felt almost peaceful. Downstairs, the bell over the bait shop door rang once. Then the power went out. The room went black. Emma did not move at first. She sat very still in the chair beside the window, Noah warm and heavy against her shoulder, one hand spread across his small back. The rain kept tapping the glass. Downstairs, the bait shop bell gave one last trembling sound. Then silence settled hard over the building. Her body understood danger before her thoughts found words. She rose slowly, keeping Noah tucked close to her chest. The floorboards beneath her bare feet were cold. Across the room, her medical bag sat beside the dresser. The pocket knife was inside the front pocket. Her cash was beneath the loose drawer liner. Her phone was on the table, charging from a cord that was now useless. Another floorboard creaked downstairs. Not the old building settling. A step. Emma slid one hand over Noah's head and backed toward the dresser. He stirred his tiny mouth, opening against her collarbone, but he did not cry. Good boy, she thought, though fear had already turned her mouth dry. The stairs groaned. One step. Then another. Emma reached the dresser and slipped her fingers into the medical bag. Her hand closed around the knife. The door opened before she could cross the room. A man stood in the doorway, tall and narrow, dressed in a dark raincoat that dripped onto the floor. His hair was silver at the temples, his face smooth in a way that made age look like a choice. Two men stood behind him. He smiled at Noah before he looked at Emma. "Emma Hayes," he said. "You were harder to find than half the men I have buried." Emma put herself between Noah and the door, though Noah was already in her arms. "Get out." The man stepped inside. "I expected more fear. You are looking at the wrong woman." His smile widened. Victor Kane. Emma knew the name. She had heard it in Adrian's house, spoken low by men who did not scare easily. Victor Kane from the north. Victor Kane who took shipping routes by burning the men who owned them. Victor Kane who did not kill quickly when slow pain could send a better message. Emma shifted her weight, hiding the knife along her wrist. "If you came for money, you picked the wrong room." "Money?" Victor looked around the small space, the peeling paint, the dresser drawer lined with blankets, the kettle on the hot plate. "No, this is not about money." His eyes returned to Noah. "This is about blood." Emma's grip tightened. Noah woke then. His face scrunched, his small body pulling in a breath. Emma pressed her lips to his hair. "Shh. Mama's here." Victor watched the gesture with interest. "So that is what he looks like when he is loved." Emma's voice dropped. "If you touch my son, I will make hell look gentle." One of Victor's men laughed. Emma moved fast. She threw the lamp at his face and lunged for the second man before the first hit the floor. The knife cut across a sleeve. A curse broke from someone's mouth. Noah screamed. Emma twisted, kicked, used her shoulder, her elbow, her teeth, anything her body remembered from rooms where survival had never been fair. For a few seconds, she was not outnumbered. She was fury. Then a hand caught her hair. Another grabbed her wrist. Pain flashed bright up her arm as the knife clattered across the floor. Noah was pulled from her chest. The sound that left Emma was not a scream at first. It was something deeper. Animal. Victor held Noah with one arm calm as a man lifting a glass. Noah wailed, red-faced and terrified, fists shaking in the air. Emma fought against the men holding her. "Give him back." Victor adjusted the blanket around Noah as if he had the right. "You should have stayed hidden better." Emma spat blood from her lip. "You should have stayed away from my child." Victor leaned close enough for her to smell rain and expensive cologne. "Tell Blackwell to come alone. Tell him to bring what is left of his empire. Tell him if I see one convoy, one helicopter, one police badge, his son stops crying." Emma went still. Victor's eyes brightened. "There it is." He stepped back with Noah. "No." Emma surged forward, but one of the men hit her hard across the ribs. Her breath vanished. She dropped to her knees, one hand on the floor, the other reaching uselessly toward Noah's fading cries as Victor carried him down the stairs. The bell over the bait shop door rang again. Then the rain swallowed everything. For several seconds, Emma could not breathe. Then she crawled to the fallen phone. The screen had cracked when it hit the floor, but it still worked. Her fingers shook so violently she entered the wrong number twice. Adrian answered on the first ring. No greeting, only breath. Emma closed her eyes. "He has Noah." Silence. Then Adrian's voice came through low and stripped bare. "Where are you? Do not make this about me." "Emma." "No. Listen to me. Victor Kane took our son." The word "our" cut through the line and left both of them quiet for half a heartbeat. Adrian spoke carefully. "Is Noah hurt?" "He was crying. He was alive when they left." "Are you hurt?" "Focus on Noah." Another pause. This time Adrian obeyed. "Tell me what you need." Emma pressed one hand to her ribs and forced herself upright. That sentence stopped her in a way his anger never could have. Not, "I will handle it." Not, "You are coming with me." Not, "Trust me." "Tell me what you need." Her throat tightened. "I need my son alive. Then that is all that matters." Emma looked at the open door. The broken lamp, the small blanket fallen on the floor. "He said you come alone." "I will. If you turn this into a war, Noah dies." "I heard you. No guards around him. No shooting near him. No pride." Adrian's voice roughened. "No pride." She believed the pain in his voice. She did not trust it. Not yet. Victor chose an abandoned textile warehouse outside Asheville, North Carolina, a dead building near the river where rain leaked through the roof and old machines sat beneath dust like sleeping animals. Emma arrived in the passenger seat of Adrian's car because she refused to be left behind, and he had not argued once. That frightened her almost as much as Victor. Adrian drove through the rain with both hands on the wheel. His face looked thinner than she remembered. There were new lines around his mouth, a scar near his jaw, shadows beneath his eyes that money could not soften. He had come without a convoy, no black line of SUVs, no parade of armed men, no empire rolling behind him, only one car, one gun, and coal hidden miles away because Emma had demanded backup for Noah, not for Adrian. When the warehouse came into view, Adrian stopped the car. For a moment, neither of them moved. Emma listened to the rain hitting the roof. Then Adrian turned to her. His gaze went to the swelling bruise near her cheek, the split in her lip, the way one arm curled protectively around her empty chest. His hand tightened on the steering wheel. "Did he hurt you?" Emma stared through the windshield. "Focus on Noah." "Yes." The answer came immediately. Small obedience. Too late for so many things, but not for this. They stepped into the rain together. The warehouse doors stood open. Inside, yellow work lights glowed from the upper platform. Water dripped through broken skylights. Chains hung from the ceiling. Somewhere deep in the building, Noah cried. Emma almost broke apart. Her feet moved before Adrian could stop her. He caught her wrist, then released it instantly, as if remembering he had not been invited to hold her. "Emma," he said softly. She turned on him. "Do not tell me to stay back. I was going to say breathe." She hated him for being right. She took one breath, then another. They walked inside. Victor Kane stood on a metal platform above the factory floor with Noah in his arms. The baby's crying echoed off steel and brick. Two men stood below with rifles. Another stood near a table covered in papers. Victor smiled down at them. The king and the runaway nurse. Beautiful. Emma's hands curled at her sides. "Give me my son." Victor bounced Noah once, mockingly gentle. "Your son. That depends which bloodline we are pricing tonight." Adrian stepped forward into the light. "Let the child go." Victor's eyes moved to him, Adrian Blackwell asking instead of taking. "I should have brought an audience." Adrian removed his gun and set it on the floor. Then he slid it away with his foot. Victor laughed. "On your knees." The words hung in the warehouse. Emma looked at Adrian. Every man in his life had taught him that kneeling meant weakness. His father, his enemies, his men, the house with marble floors, the name Blackwell itself. Adrian looked at Noah, then at Emma. Then he lowered himself to his knees on the wet concrete. No hesitation, no performance, just surrender. Emma's breath caught in her chest. Victor clapped once, slow and delighted. "There he is, brought down by a nurse and a baby." Adrian lifted his face. "No," he said. "Raised by them." Victor's smile faltered. "Only for a second." Then he motioned to the man beside the table. "Sign." Papers were carried down and thrown in front of Adrian. Roots, accounts, names, warehouses. Everything left of the Blackwell network. Adrian signed each page without reading. Emma watched him carefully. There was no calculation in his face, no hidden pleasure, no old hunger for control. Only Noah. Only the sound of his son crying above them. When Adrian finished, Victor tucked the papers under one arm. Touching, he said, "But I never liked unfinished stories." Emma saw Adrian's eyes shift past Victor. A red light blinked beneath the platform. Wires, fuel drums, a timer. Her heart stopped. "Adrian." "I see it." Victor smiled. "Then we are all educated." The next seconds shattered. A shot cracked from the upper shadows. One of Victor's men fell. Cole moved along the catwalk, gun raised, face hard. The second guard turned toward him. Adrian surged up from the floor and drove his shoulder into the man nearest Emma. Emma ran for the stairs. Victor backed away with Noah. No closer. Noah screamed, tiny hands clawing at the blanket. Emma stopped halfway up, both hands raised. "Give him to me." Victor pressed a gun near Noah's blanket. Adrian froze below. The timer blinked red. 42 seconds. Victor's eyes darted between them, and for the first time, Emma saw it. Not power. Panic. Adrian spoke from the factory floor. "Victor." Victor looked down. Adrian stood with his hands open. "You wanted me. You have me." Victor's mouth twisted. "I had you when you started caring." Adrian moved slowly toward the stairs. "Then prove it." Victor aimed at him. Emma saw the moment before it happened. Adrian lunged. Victor fired. The shot hit Adrian in the side, but he did not stop. He slammed into Victor against the railing. Noah slipped from Victor's arm. Emma caught him. Her knees hit the metal steps, pain tearing through her, but Noah was against her chest, alive, screaming, warm. She wrapped both arms around him. "I have you. I have you." Below, Cole shouted her name. The timer flashed. 21 seconds. Adrian and Victor crashed against the platform rail. Victor clawed for the gun. Adrian drove his fist into Victor's face once, twice, then shoved him toward the far end of the platform where wires sparked near the fuel drums. Emma stood with Noah clutched to her. "Adrian." He looked at her. For one impossible second, the warehouse disappeared. There was only rain firelight and the man who had once called her nobody looking at her like she was the only truth left in his world. "Run," he said. She shook her head. "No. Emma. No." He smiled, then small and broken. "Please, let me do one thing right." Cole grabbed Emma's arm. She fought him. Noah screamed against her chest. Adrian held Victor back as the timer dropped. 10 seconds. 9. 8. Adrian looked at Noah. His voice carried through the rain leaking from the roof. "Tell him I loved him before I knew how." Cole dragged Emma down the stairs. She fought until her body gave out. They reached the warehouse doors as the world behind them turned white. The explosion threw them into the mud. Heat rolled over Emma's back. Glass and metal rained down. For a moment she heard nothing but a high, ringing sound and Noah's cry against her chest. Then sound returned all at once. Rain. Fire. Cole shouting. Her own voice screaming Adrian's name. She tried to stand, but Cole held her down. "No." Emma clawed at the mud. "No." The warehouse burned orange against the black sky. Noah sobbed against her neck. Emma held him so tightly he became the only thing keeping her inside her body. By morning, federal agents had arrived. So had ambulances, fire crews, men in plain clothes, and faces Emma did not know. Cole spoke to them with blood on his collar and ash in his hair. He handed over files. Adrian had already prepared documents that mapped the Blackwell empire and Victor Kane's network in names, numbers, routes, and bank accounts. Adrian had not come only to trade power. He had come to end it. No body was found in the first sweep. Then they found enough blood-burned fabric and wreckage to write his name into the dead. Adrian Blackwell was declared gone before sunset. Serena Vale was arrested 3 days later in Charleston. The poisoning, the false evidence, the money trails, the conspiracy with Victor Kane, all of it came into the light. Men who had once bowed in the Blackwell mansion began giving statements. Some out of fear. Some out of opportunity. Some because Cole Bennett stood in the room and looked at them until silence became harder than truth. The Blackwell house was seized. The gates were chained. The mansion with white columns and hidden rooms finally stood empty. Emma refused the Blackwell name. She refused the mansion. She refused the blood-soaked money except for what belonged legally to Noah, and even that she placed under strict control, most of it directed toward medical care for children of violence. Reporters came looking. Emma disappeared before they learned how to spell her name correctly. 3 years passed. Bar Harbor, Maine did not know Emma Hayes as the woman who had run from a Mafia king. It knew her as the nurse who opened the small clinic near the harbor before sunrise and stayed late when fishermen came in with split hands and stubborn hearts. The clinic was painted blue. The porch sagged slightly on one side. In winter, the windows fogged from the heat inside. In summer, tourists came in sunburned and embarrassed. Locals came in pretending they were fine until Emma gave them the look that made lying pointless. Noah was 3 years old. He had dark eyes, a serious frown, and Emma's determined chin. He loved lighthouse books, hated peas, and asked questions with the focus of a tiny investigator. One evening, while rain moved softly over the harbor, Noah found an old photograph tucked inside Emma's blue notebook. It was not the sonogram. That picture stayed in a locked box in Emma's closet. This photograph showed Adrian standing in a garden blurred by distance, one hand raised as if he had not known the camera was there. Noah climbed onto the chair beside Emma and pointed. "Who is that?" Emma looked at the photo for a long time. Then she sat down beside him. "That is your father." Noah studied the man's face. "Where is he?" Emma looked toward the window. The sea beyond the clinic was gray and restless. "He made bad choices," she said. "Then he made one brave one." Noah considered that. "Did he love me?" Emma felt the question move through every scar she carried. "Yes," she said softly. "In the end, he loved you the way he should have from the beginning." Noah touched the picture with one small finger. Was he scared? Emma almost smiled. "I think he finally was." A week later, Emma closed the clinic after dark. Rain tapped against the windows, soft and steady. Noah was asleep in the apartment above the clinic, watched by Mrs. Bell, the retired teacher from next door. Emma locked the medicine cabinet, turned off the lights, and stepped onto the porch. She stopped. Across the street, beneath a yellow street lamp, stood a man in a dark coat, thinner than memory, scarred along one side of his jaw, older in the eyes. Adrian Blackwell, alive. Emma could not move. The rain fell between them. He did not cross the street. He did not call her name like he had any right to it. He stood with his hands visible at his sides and waited. Finally, Emma walked down the porch steps, slowly. Her heartbeat sounded too loud in her ears. When she reached the edge of the street, she stopped. "You are dead." Adrian's mouth moved, almost a smile, but not quite. "I was supposed to be. Why are you here?" His eyes lifted toward the upstairs window where warm light glowed behind the curtains. "To ask." Emma's face hardened. "Ask what his throat moved." "If I can meet him." There was no demand in it, no command, no threat tucked beneath tenderness. Emma studied him. The scars, the weight loss, the cane he held loosely in one hand, the way his body leaned slightly to the left as if the explosion had taken something permanent from him. "You do not get to walk into his life because you survived. I know. You do not get forgiveness because you suffered. I know. You do not get me back because you finally learned regret." His voice stayed quiet. "I know." The rain darkened his coat. Water ran down the side of his face. He did not wipe it away. Emma crossed her arms. "What do you want, Adrian?" He looked at her as if the answer had taken years to become small enough to speak. "A chance to become someone my son does not have to recover from." Emma looked away. For a moment, all she could hear was the harbor. Rope tapping against masts, water moving under docks, rain on wood. Then she looked back at him. "Public places only." Adrian nodded. "No gifts unless I approve them." "Yes." "No guards." "Yes." "No lies." "Yes." "No touching Noah unless Noah reaches first." Adrian's jaw tightened, not in anger, in pain. "Yes." "No speaking badly about the choices I made to protect him." "I would not." Emma's eyes sharpened. "You did once." He lowered his gaze. "Yes." She waited. He looked up again. "I will not again. No using love as an excuse to control anyone." Adrian stood very still. "Yes." Emma searched his face for the old argument, the old pride, the flash of ownership dressed as protection. It did not come. "That is it?" she asked. "Yes." No argument. His eyes held hers. "I have done enough arguing with your freedom." The first meeting happened 2 days later at a park near the harbor. Emma chose the place. Morning light. Other families nearby. Open paths. Easy exits. Adrian arrived early and sat on a bench with both hands visible. He looked more nervous than Emma had ever seen him, including the night he had nearly bled out in her clinic. Noah hid behind Emma's leg. Adrian slowly lowered himself to one knee several feet away, careful not to tower over him. "Hi, Noah," he said. "My name is Adrian." Noah peeked around Emma's coat. "Mama says you knew me when I was a picture." Adrian's eyes flickered with pain. "I did." Noah frowned. "Did I look like a bean?" Emma turned her face aside. Adrian nodded solemnly. "A very brave bean." Noah stared at him. Then he laughed. Small, bright, unaware of how it broke the air open. Adrian closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, there were tears on his face, but he did not reach for Noah. He did not move at all. He let the laugh be enough. Months passed. Trust did not return like lightning. It returned like tidewater, inch by inch. Adrian stayed in Bar Harbor under a legal identity arranged through federal protection. He lived in a small rented cottage outside town and drove an old truck that refused to start in cold weather. He worked quietly at the clinic when Emma allowed it, carrying boxes, fixing loose steps, restocking shelves. He never donated money in his own name. He never gave Noah anything expensive. The first gift he was allowed to bring was a book about lighthouses wrapped badly in brown paper. Noah loved it. Adrian learned small things. How Noah liked his sandwiches cut into triangles. How he hated peas but would eat carrots if they were called lighthouse sticks. How storms made Emma check the locks twice. How silence could be respectful instead of punishing. He never entered Emma's apartment without being invited. He never called Noah my son in a way that erased her. The first time Emma said our son Adrian looked down at the floor and took a breath, like someone had handed him something too fragile to hold tightly. Winter turned to spring. One evening, rain came soft over the harbor, the kind that made the world smell clean without pretending it had never been dirty. Emma finished with the last patient and stepped onto the clinic porch. Adrian sat on the steps with Noah asleep against his side. The boy's small hand was curled in Adrian's coat. Adrian had one arm around him, not gripping, just guarding the space where the child had chosen to rest. He looked up when Emma opened the door. "I can carry him in," Adrian said. "If you want?" Emma stood there with the clinic light behind her. Years ago he would have taken. Now he asked. She looked at Noah's sleeping face, then at Adrian's scarred hands held still and waiting. "Careful," she said. Adrian rose slowly, lifting Noah as if he carried the only innocent thing his world had ever given him. Emma stepped aside. He crossed the threshold with their son in his arms. Not into a mansion, not into a cage, into a small, warm clinic by the sea where rain softened against the windows and love no longer needed locks to prove it could stay.